Okay.
Can I start now?
A very good evening to all of you, and a warm welcome to the 9th webinar session of the faculties. Before we start this session, I would like to take this as an opportunity to introduce our guest speaker, Professor Ruwan Abeysekara, who is an expert in qualitative research, especially in the case study method. So Professor Abeysekara currently serves as the head of the Department of Finance in University of California. He has obtained his PhD from Bournemouth University, United Kingdom, specialized in entrepreneurship, and Master of Business Administration from University of Colombo. His main research interests are on microfinance, entrepreneurship, human resource management, and marketing. And also, Professor Abeysekara has won Senate and Vice Chancellor awards as a researcher. So now I would like to hand over the session to Professor Ruwan Abeysekara. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Janani, for your kind introduction. And first of all, I think I would like to thank Yashodhara and Janani for inviting me for this webinar series organized by the Department of Management Studies of Gampaha Wickramarachchi University, the new university. I am very happy to be able to make this presentation today because it is our duty to share our knowledge being in the academia. And if you look at our faculty that I work for, University of California, the Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies. So we also, organize, these kind of, workshop series, if you like, because I belong to Department of Finance. So I always encourage my staff members, to organize these kind of things. And my department, every month we have our research seminar series where one of our or couple of our staff members to make a presentation on their research work. So I think last I would say 2 years or so, I have seen a big improvement in our staff members when it comes to their research output, because one of the things that we wanted to develop is research skills, because our faculty and our department were lagging behind in research. So now, thanks to these kind of series, I think I can see the results now. So when I say research, so there are different approaches. Quantitative, qualitative, and mix, right? If you really look at the staff members' research output, I am referring to especially management staff members, right? Maybe if you like, maybe the science faculty also, they are more into quantitative research. So in other words, they deal with numbers, right? They want to measure things. So, but you rarely find staff members engage in qualitative research. So qualitative research, we do not deal with numbers. We don't measure things. Instead, we are concerned about, words, right? Experiences of people, and we value. I mean, when it comes to researcher, the researcher's intuition, his sensation, right? Something like that, right? So we rarely find, but I'm happy to say that now things have picked up in recent time. If you look at our faculty, now I could see some new qualitative researchers. So they are embarking on qualitative research. This is largely due to the fact that, those who have got their PhDs by using qualitative methods. So there's a trend right now in qualitative research, but this is very prominent in Western world, especially in UK, because qualitative research is becoming very popular, right? However, it is still not that popular in USA, but down under New Zealand and Australia, the qualitative research is becoming popular as UK and some of the European countries. Then we have the other approach, mixed method, that I am not going to, I don't want to say that I am not going to recommend mixed method. Obviously, mixed method is the best method because you have goodness of both worlds, quantitative and qualitative. Then you have mix. But the thing is, doing mixed method research is very time consuming and difficult. So that's why I do not recommend mixed method, especially for undergraduate and masters, because you can't complete the research on time. However, for PhDs, of course, it is a bit recommended. So, today my topic is, as you are aware, introduction to qualitative research. So before I share my presentation slides, so let me give you an overview about qualitative research, the approach. Then you will be able to follow me and understand what I'm going to say, right? Otherwise, you will find it difficult unless you have done a qualitative research. The approach is in qualitative research, first you have to find out a problem, right? Because for any approach, whether it be quantitative, qualitative, or mixed, you need to have a problem, right? So I think so when I say problem in qualitative research, you need to have a problem not tackled by anybody. Then you may argue that even quantitative research, I mean, you need to have a problem not touched by anybody else. But quantitative research, you find sometimes, okay, you can use a model, used by another researcher. You are using the same model, but only difference is the context, right? Because maybe research was done in India, but by using the same model, you are doing in Sri Lanka. That's fair enough. So it's a quantitative research you can do. However, qualitative research, you cannot do that. You need to have a problem, right? A very a problem not explored by anybody, right? So that's one of the differences between quantitative and qualitative. So then the other thing is, okay, now you got this problem, then the approach is you need to have a set of research questions, in qualitative research, often research questions start with how and why, right? How, for example, how do people interact with, their colleagues? Why do people interact with their colleagues, right? So it's very important to use these two words, how and why. Occasionally, you can use the word what also in word in questions. Okay, now you have a research problem, then you have set of research questions. Then, of course, you have to really think about the since you have chosen qualitative research part, what type of qualitative, because there are a number of types of qualitative research. So which type are you going to choose, right? Because I will come back to that, because there are different types, such as case study, ethnography, grounded theory, phenomenology, narratives, right? So you have to select one of those things, right? Then, but if you look at there are differences among these types. However, the approach is, okay, now you got these research questions, then you have to go out and collect the data from respondents. Now, for example, let's say your research is all about Vaddas in, who are living in Sri Lanka. That they are living in Mayangane. So you want to look at their, for example, food habits. Okay. So then you need to prepare a semi-structured questionnaire. Now, semi-structured questionnaire is different to structured questionnaire. Semi-structured questionnaire, you have about maybe maximum of 10 questions, all open-ended questions. For example, you would ask from one of the Vedas, how long have been, living in this village? What would you eat? What do you eat for your breakfast? How do you prepare your breakfast? So those are open-ended questions. Open-ended questions mean you allow the respondent to, talk on and on, right? So remember, you can't just go and ask questions. You need to have number of questions, open-ended questions, right? That is called semi-structured questioning. So you go and interview a person, right? You interview the Vedda. So that is called in-depth interviews, if you like, in-depth interviews. So while interviewing the Vedda, you have to make sure you record the conversation. Whole conversation, you have to record it. In general, qualitative research, the interview will last long between half an hour to 1 hour. There is no hard and fast rule. If you want, you can go up to even 2 hours. But I would say better to, have an interview between half an hour to 1 hour, right? So then after the interview, so there are techniques that you have to use how to conduct interviews. Maybe in the future, I am more than happy if invited to do a presentation on how to, conduct in-depth interviews. Then after the interview, you come back and you have to listen to the recording, right? Because I said to you that you have to record the conversation. You can use your mobile phone for that. Otherwise, you have to use a special gadget, right? I think now, thanks to this smartphone, you can easily do that. Come back while listening to the recording. You have to transcribe what you are listening. In other words, you have to type in, right, what has been recorded, word to word, right? that is called verbatim, right? Verbatim, the word to word, right? So you type in, then once you type, that document is called transcript, right? So if you have interviewed 10 Vedas, then you will end up having 10 transcript, right? So this transcript is very, very important, right? So then by using the transcripts, then you can analyze the data. In qualitative research, the main analysis technique is called thematic analysis. Some people call it coding or indexing also. That is also right, coding or indexing. So then in general, thematic analysis means you read the transcript and you look at the patterns. Are there repetitive words, right? Is the person talking about the same thing, right? So then this repetitive words sometime or the patterns become a themes, right? So then that's called thematic analysis or coding. And if you want, because analysis has to be done manually, then you can feed this data into NVO software, because NVO is very famous for qualitative data analysis. But a lot of people think that NVO software can do the analysis on its own. No, it can't do that. It has got two, facilities, auto coding, right, and manual coding. Auto coding means it gives you the coding, but it doesn't make any sense, right? I think you have to do manual coding, and you can feed the coding into the NVO. That is all right. But NVO is good. Why you can store the data in a systematic way that enhances the reliability of the research, because when for any research you need to have reliability and validity. So I think NVO helps you enhance the reliability, right? So then after that you can report your findings. That's the process, right? So I think it is very interesting, right? Because there is field work involved in qualitative research. You have to go out, you have to meet people, you have to listen to them, you have to come back. And in qualitative research, you don't have a rigid structure. In quantitative research, you have a rigid structure. When you go out, collect the data and come back, you cannot change anything, right? But in qualitative research, maybe after 2 interviews, if you find that my semi-structured question is not good enough, right? Then maybe you can change some of the questions in the semi-structured questionnaire. And then you can go out and collect data with the refined questionnaire, right? Because that part is called reflection, right? You can look at your experience and do changes accordingly. But quantitative research, you cannot do that. It is very rigid structure. But here, the structure is very, very flexible. Then when it comes to publications also, now, unlike those days, a lot of journals now encourage qualitative research, right? In the past, when you submitted, I think they would sometimes decline. But now things have changed. I think journals, I know that editors, they welcome qualitative research. So I think I encourage you, right, to get to know qualitative research and maybe do some qualitative research work. However, I want to tell you that you must have the passion to do qualitative research. Otherwise, don't do that. If you are a person who loves the numbers, right, then don't do qualitative research for the sake of doing it. right? But if you like, talking to people, listen to people, listen to their experiences, right? Then if you like words over numbers, then qualitative research is for you, right? That's kind of overview. So let me start my presentation. Janani, can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Right, good. Okay, introduction to qualitative research. So I think these are the contents of my presentation: research philosophy, research logic, research approaches, then of course qualitative research, types of qualitative research, data collection method, sampling strategy, and finally the analysis of data. Now, this research philosophy is very, very important. Now, especially for qualitative research, because I have seen that quantitative researchers, they are not that much of concern about research philosophy. That doesn't mean that it is not important for them, but qualitative researchers, when they justify as to why they are doing qualitative research, they really have to, show that they are adopting the right philosophy. Right. So what do you mean by research philosophy? So I think a lot of students, especially undergraduate students, they do not understand this research philosophy. Right. Even when it comes to master's level also, they find it difficult. But this is, I would say, the most important thing, irrespective of which approach you choose, quantitative, qualitative, or mix. So research philosophy is a researcher's particular belief about the reality, which will be reflected in the nature of the data collection, analysis, and overall phenomena to be perceived and interpreted. Right? So I think now your research philosophy, right? In other words, your belief about the reality will really set a tone for your research. How you collect the data, how you analyze the data, everything is dependent on your research philosophy. In other words, your belief about the reality. Right? So when I say your belief about the reality, now reality can be single or multiple. Right? Reality can be single or multiple. So especially the qualitative researchers, they believe that there are multiple realities in the world, whereas quantitative researchers always think that there is only one reality in the world. So this is very, very important to understand. So what do you mean by single reality and multiple reality? So let me give you a couple of examples to illustrate it. Now, if you are a qualitative researcher, so let's say your research is all about, I'm using my running example, uh, exploring food habits of Vedas in Mayangane. Then what you do is you go there, then you interview Vedas, right? And then you are trying to co-construct the reality. So the reality is constructed by the researcher and the respondent, right? Right? So I think we really listen to that person. We try to pursue the person's opinion, right? And we are trying to co-construct the reality, right? So, but if you look at, so then let's say that I did this research, I came back and I reported, right? So then when reporting, I will sometimes be biased also, because as a person, I am influenced by my background, my educational background, my, my religion, my cultural background, and so on and so forth. I have my value systems also. So that also will uh, play a role, right, in the study. So in qualitative research, the bias is accepted. Remember that. But quantitative researcher believes a single reality. Now, qualitative researcher, when I say multiple reality, I go out and I come and report, right? How these Vedas, uh, behave, right? When it comes to their eating. Now, let's say Janani goes out and does the same research, food habits of Vedas, and she might report in a different way to that I report, right? Because she look at the phenomena in a different way. But you can't say that Janani is wrong, Ruwan is right, right? They look at the same thing in a different angle, right? So why the reality is constructed by a people, right? So that's called multiple realities are there. So we appreciate these multiple realities, right? Because in especially when we deal with social issues, social problems. But when I say single reality, it's very different. So researcher believes, right, there is no relationship between the research and what is being researched. Whoever who does the research, the outcome is the same, right? Right. So researcher cannot add his values, his biases to the research. The reality cannot be co-constructed by the people who are involved in the research, right? So in other words, there is only reality in the world. You have to go out and discover it. So let me give you a couple of examples to show single reality. But remember, single reality also exists in the world. Now, can you remember when we were doing our O-levels, we used to do some tests, litmus test in the lab, right? We know that we use the litmus paper, it turns from blue to red or red to blue, if there's a gas or alkaline or whatever. Can you remember, right? So there, doesn't matter who does the experiment also is a research, the outcome is same. Litmus paper turns, let's say, from red to blue, doesn't matter Ruwan does it, Yashodhara does it, same, right? One outcome, right? One single reality, right? So when it, so especially science research is one single reality, single outcome, right? Then when it comes to and social sciences, now you know that when we are doing, quantitative, when we are using quantitative approach and when we are using conceptual framework, right? We are very familiar with that. You have set of independent variables, you have a dependent variable, and you have a number of hypotheses, right? So there, no matter who does the research, no matter who does the analysis, right? Either the hypothesis is proven or disproven, right? So the finding is same, right? One single reality, right? Then you may ask, so which is the better method? Quantitative approach with multiple realities, qualitative approach with multiple realities, or quantitative approach with single reality? It depends. It depends on the research problem. Some research problems demand single reality, but some research problem demand multiple reality. For example, let's say you want to explore the LGBT community in Sri Lanka. You want to explore the beggars in Sri Lanka. So obviously, multiple realities. It has to be a qualitative research. It depends, right? So remember this philosophy is very, very important. So first we have to look at whether you embrace multiple reality or single reality. So if you look at, I think, research philosophy, I think you can divide it into two branches, positivism and social constructivism. The main idea behind positivism is that the reality exists externally, and its properties should be measured through objective methods rather than inferred subjectively through sensation, reflection, or intuition. So here positivism actually is relating to single reality, whereas social constructivism is relating to multiple reality. Now, when you say positivism, we always think that reality exists externally, right? It is independent of the researcher. You have to go out and discover, right? You cannot, pursue it through your senses, right? From your intuition, you can't do that, right? It is very objective based, not subjective based. Whereas social constructivist stars believe that reality is not objective. I said to you, it is co-constructed and given meaning by the people. Very subjective, right? So Janani will come up with different findings. Yasodhara will come up with different findings, because that is how they look at the world, how they look at the reality, right? So research philosophy can be thought of in three major ways: ontological, epistemological, and axiological. So don't get scared of these words. When I say ontological, so what is the nature of the reality? So I think the next slide will make it clearer. Epistemological means relationship between the researcher and the research. Axiological means role of values, right? So let me, I think, explain these jargons on the next slide. So I think here this slide demarcates the characteristics between quantitative and qualitative approaches, right? Based on ontological, epistemological, axiological, and of course, the rhetorical ways. Now, you can see this table. You have 4 columns, if you like: assumption. Now let's look at ontological assumption. So ontology means what is the nature of the reality, right? So I think that is the ontology. What is the nature? Now, if you are doing a quantitative research, you always believe that there is only one reality that we call singles reality, singular, and reality is objective, right? You can measure the reality by using numbers. If you are a qualitative researcher, how you look at the world, how you look at the reality, you think that reality is multiple, right? And in general, it is co-constructed. Then epistemological, what is the relationship between the researcher and the research? quantitative research, research is independent of what is being researched. Right? So I think no matter who does the research, yeah, you have to go out and discover. You can't shape the outcome. You can't do modifications, right? But qualitative research, researcher interacts with that being research. You go out, you talk to Vedas, you try to understand the Veda, what he says, you are trying to perceive him through your senses, and maybe you talk to him to understand more, right? Then you co-construct the reality. Then the axiology. What do you mean by axiology? What is the role of values? This is very, very important. For quantitative research, it is value-free and unbiased. As a researcher, you are very unbiased. You are not biased. And value-free, you are not going to put your values. Being religious, being educated, your caste, we are influenced by so many factors. So you are not going to, shape your research based on your characteristics, value-free. However, in qualitative research, it is value-laden and bias, right? So if you really read the qualitative research, you could notice how the researcher has included his values in the research. You can see it. Then rhetorical. What is the language of research? Now, quantitative research, if you read it, it is very formal. Academic words you use. You never use person voice, right? You use mostly passive voice. It was reported that you don't use I, we, right? And it is very impersonal voice. But qualitative research, if you read the qualitative research journal article, you use IV. It is a bit informal. You can see a personal voice in the journal article. For example, you read my articles. I have done some qualitative research. It is on internet. If you read 4 or 5 articles of mine, you can see my inner feelings, right? That are in my research. But if you look at a quantitative research, the writing is very neutral. You can't see the language, right, of the researcher or the who has written, right? Then qualitative research, use of accepted qualitative words. Now this is very important. Now qualitative research, you can't use words at your will. You got to be very, very careful, because I have seen that some students, they use the words such as investigating, evaluating. You can't use such words in qualitative research. In qualitative research, there are accepted words. For example, you can use exploring, examining, right? So these are the words you use. When you use investigating, evaluating, assessing, that means you are measuring things, right? You are counting numbers. But in qualitative research, it is not so, right? You are dealing with experiences, words, things like that. So remember, these are stark differences between quantitative and qualitative approaches. Then when it comes to research, we know that there are 3 research approaches: quantitative, qualitative, and mix. I said to you, before. I think here we try to understand. If you are doing a quantitative research, your research logic is going to be deductive. While deductive means researcher might begin with a specific theory of interest and then narrow it down to a few hypotheses. In other words, in quantitative research, your research logic is deductive. That means you are going to test theories. So typically you have a conceptual framework, right? So you are going to test the conceptual framework. That is typical deductive approach. But qualitative research, the research logic is inductive. What do you mean by inductive? Here, instead of testing theories, you build theories, theory building. Because I said to you that you collect the data in qualitative research, then you analyze by using coding or indexing. So once you have analyzed the data, you can come up with a model, right? Your final output would be a model. So that means theory building in qualitative research. But in mixed method, I think you use the logic as abduction. So in abduction, you do both theory testing and theory building, right? Remember, in qualitative research, I mean, you have to mix both quantitative data and qualitative data, right? So theory building and theory testing. So I think when it comes to research approaches, in fact, there are three approaches: quantitative, qualitative, and mixed. So here I have only shown two, quantitative and qualitative, for the simplicity, but because a lot of researchers do not engage in mixed method. But remember, the third one would be mixed method, right? So the quantitative, also known as the positivist approach, believes that the researcher is independent of what is being researched. Qualitative, the researcher interacts with what is being researched, right? So in nutshell, now up to now, we have learned what research philosophy is. Research philosophy is how you look at the reality, whether there's a single reality or multiple reality, right? So based on that, we can have two paradigms to research philosophy, if you like: positivistic philosophy and constructivism, social constructivism philosophy, right? So if you embrace positivistic philosophy, then you believe in single reality and your approach is going to be quantitative. And as a researcher, you are independent of what is being researched. In contrast, right, social constructivism paradigm. As a researcher, you believe in multiple realities. There are multiple realities out there in the world, right? Then you are concerned about subjectiveness as opposed to objectiveness. Then in qualitative approach, as a researcher, you interact with what is being researched. You interact with people and you are trying to co-construct the reality, right? So then let's move on to serious business, the today's topic, qualitative research. So according to Creswell, qualitative research takes an inductive approach because theory building, not theory testing, in the data analysis and builds general themes from the particular, and the researcher makes interpretation of meaning of data. So the Creswell says, right, in qualitative research, you take an inductive approach, right, in the data analysis, and as a researcher, you are trying to interpret the meaning of data. So what are the characteristics of qualitative research according to Creswell? It is field focus. I already said to you that in qualitative research, a lot of field work is there. It is very interesting, mind you, right? I myself have done field work. It is very interesting. The researcher has the key instrument of data collection. So I think you cannot get data collected by using various people. As a researcher, you have to go out and collect the data on your own. And in qualitative research, you can have multiple data sources such as words, images, photos. Don't think that only words. Even you can have photos, images. When you analyze the data, you analyze the data inductively because you are going to build theories recursively and interactively. Recursively, repeatedly, and interactively, right? So when you are analyzing the data, sometimes you have to get the help of your participants. Then participants mean is focus. Participant meanings focus on participants' perspectives, their meanings and their subjective views. Right? I think in your qualitative study, always you have to focus on your respondents' perspectives, their meanings. So remember, in qualitative research, you have to use theoretical lenses. We know that there are a lot of theories. For example, we know that as management lecturers, in marketing, we have, 4 Ps. It's a theory: product, price, place, promotion. In accounting finance, we have agency theory. And HRM, we have some theories like, organizational commitment, affective theories, affective commitment, stuff like that, right? So in institutional theory of Scott, right? Co-creation, co-production theories. So remember, in qualitative research, some people, there's a misconception. No, you cannot use theories in qualitative research. No, that is not true. Qualitative research, you can use theory to shed light on the study. Right? Shed light on the study. That means it will guide you to do the research, but grounded theory method, you hardly use theory. I will get back to that. Then emergent design. In qualitative research, the design is not tight. It is emerging, right? Because in quantitative research, it is very tight. Then interpretive inquiry, the researcher reflects on his role, the role of the reader and the role of the participant in shaping the study. This is very, very important. This is right reflection, right? So I think always you have to look at your experience, right? Then you have to look at the participant's experience. How would the reader think about my study when shaping the study? The holistic account. Now, in quantitative research, we select few variables, right? And we single out those variables. And we assume, other factors don't, of course, we know that they influence, the problem that is at your hand, but we single out variable. But in qualitative research, we have to consider all the variables. That is why it is a bit difficult, right? Now, if you look at the current, Sri Lankan crisis, you cannot select few variables and look at the whole issue. You have to look at, whole heaps of variables, right? That's why I think qualitative research is warranted for this current crisis in Sri Lanka. Then let's look at types of research, qualitative research. So mainly there are 5 types: case study, ethnography, narratives, phenomenological, and grounded theory. I think when you become a qualitative researcher, sometimes you become specialized in one of these methods. In my case, I am specializing case study method. But now, these days, I am trying to learn the 4th one, phenomenological one, right? But if time permits, I would like to learn others also, right? So let's look at these 5 types in turn. Now, especially the case study. Case study is an empirical inquiry that investigates a contemporary phenomenon in depth and within its real-life context, especially when the boundaries between the phenomenon and its context are not clearly evident. Now remember, case study method can be used for contemporary phenomena. You cannot use case study for something that happened in the past. Now, for example, you can use case study for now this struggle or the problem that we are having. For example, we can have this goal phase struggle, right? How these especially young people, how they are protesting, right, against the government in goal phase. That itself is a case study. It's a contemporary. What is happening now, right? So case study could be single or multiple, right? Goal phase case is a single case study. Now let's say your research is all about ragging behavior of undergraduates of Sri Lankan state universities. Then obviously you have multiple cases. Why? You have to consider state universities in Sri Lanka, right? Your Vikamarachi Gampaha, Kalaniya, Colombo, all state universities need to be considered. Then it becomes a multiple case study. So I think in future, if you want to get to know case study method, don't worry. I am there. I will come and do a presentation, right, in the future. So if you are interested. Then ethnography is very interesting. Ethnography, you become a participant observer, right, in the problem environment. For example, if you want to do a research on Vedas in Sri Lanka, you have to go to Vedas village in Mayangane, you have to wear like Venda, you have to eat like Veda, you have to live with them, and then you have to collect the data. In Sri Lanka, we had a very famous ethnographic researcher. Now he is gone. He is a very famous Nanda Sena Ratnapala, famous professor in Sri Jadapura University. He used to do research especially on beggars and prostitutes. So I think when he was doing a research on beggars, he would live as a beggar. So there's an interesting story also. Due to time limitation, I don't have time to share that very interesting story, right? Then narratives. Narratives means you study of experiences. So in narratives, what we do is we listen to stories of people. For example, you can select Sangakkara. It's kind of a biographical study. You can listen to his stories, how he was brought up, how he started his cricketing career, and then you can do a qualitative research. Then the phenomenology. So phenomenology, its aim is to describe an experience as it is actually lived by the person. In phenomenology, you have to listen to people's experiences. We call it lived experiences. For example, you can examine the people's experience in a fishing village in Gaul. So you go there and interview some fishermen, right? And try to learn how they fish, something like that, right? So I think here we look at essence, you look at only the experience. It's a kind of a story telling, but here you look at a particular experience, right? So I think this is very interesting. I recommend phenomenology in order to carry out qualitative research. Then we have grounded theory. I think grounded theory was introduced way back in 1916 by, I think, Strauss and Gloss, still very popular. In grounded theory, the difference is you don't use theory in the study, because most of other qualitative types, you can use theories like you name it, agency theory to resource-based view, you can use it to shed light on the study. But grounded theory, you don't use theories per se. You have a problem, you go out and collect the data. And whether you see whether the theory is grounded in the data, right? Then data collection in qualitative research. So there are a number of ways that you can use to collect qualitative data. Interviews, that means one-to-one interviews. Focus group, that means you can invite a group of people, in general between 7 to 10. You pose a question to the group, right? That is focus group. Observations. To observe, for example, your research is about, let's say, examining the customer behavior in supermarket. So you go to a supermarket and without the knowledge of the customer, you observe their behavior. Which shelf they go first? How do they purchase products? Then qualitative research, you can, if you want, you can use documents also as source of data, secondary data. Then sampling. Now in quantitative research, your main sampling method is random sampling. But we call it probability sampling in quantitative research. Qualitative research, your sampling method is non-probability sampling. Right? Right? There is no probability involved there, and we can call purposive sampling. Purposive means you select the sample based on a purpose. For example, if your research is all about ragging behavior of state universities, let's say you take Kerala University as a case, then how do you choose the undergraduates for your study? In Kerala, let's say there are 5 faculties: art faculty, science faculty, commerce faculty, medical faculty, and technology faculty. Then you have to make sure you select at least one student from each faculty, right? So that is called purposive sampling, right? And qualitative research, we often use snowball sampling also. What do you mean by snowball sampling? Especially when it comes to sensitive research. Let's say your research is all about gay people in Kiribati. So it is very difficult for you to identify a sample. So what you can do is you select or you identify one gay person, you interview that person. You ask that gay person to introduce some other gay people. You go to the next person, he will introduce another gay person. So that is called snowball sampling. Then qualitative research, we resort to convenience sampling. For example, let's say my second running example, I am using here 2 examples. Veddas one and the other one is ragging. My ragging one, let's say I want to choose 5 students representing 5 faculties. Maybe I select the students that I know. So that is convenience sampling. That is all right. That is accepted in qualitative research. But quantitative research, they say, no, it is biased. You can't do that. Then last one is very important. How many interviews are enough? This is a very tricky question, isn't it? Now, I would say there are no hard and fast rules. But I would say for undergraduate level, I would say 10 interviews are enough, 10 in-depth interviews. Masters, I would say 15 to 20. PhD, right? Maybe I would say 30. Between 30 and 50 interviews are enough. When I say interviews, because in qualitative, though there are some other methods like observations, secondary data, the main method is interviews. Right? How many interviews? This is very, very important. But in UK, even they, because I have seen that for certain studies, sometimes the sample is just one interview. Right? That is accepted, but in here is bit of a danger, because when you go to Viva, or maybe in Sri Lankan, editors would raise their eyebrows saying that, oh, you have done only one interview. No, not much of work involved. Then analysis, I said to you that in analysis, we use the method called coding or indexing. So that means once you have done the interviews, then you have to transcribe it. Then you have this transcript. Then the example, let's say you have done 10 interviews. So I think 10 people would say communication is very important. Communication is very important. So you highlight the word communication so that the communication becomes one of the themes. That's a code, right? So I think then under the communication, you can have subcodes also, right? So under communication, you can have two subcodes like technical communication, non-technical communication. Then you may ask, so how do you identify technical and non-technical? Thanks to the data. So when you really analyze the data, you can see, okay, there's a pattern. Technical communication is important, non-technical communication is important. Because thing is, but remember, when giving names to teams, it is your choice. You are the person who gives names. And I would say communication. You would say another word for communication. You would say something like conversation instead of communication. That is all right. Right? So I think you can see this table. Here, I think you can see first column, you have quotations. Remember, in qualitative research, this quotation you may find in the transcript, right? Quotation. So based on the quotation only, you identify the theme, right? And there's an interpretation. Now, for example, sample evidence. Let's say my research is all about interaction between people, right? So I think, let's say I have interviewed Mr. Pereira, right? Mr. Pereira say, okay, I always talk to my friend, right? That is how I maintain the relationship between my friends, right? So that is a quotation within inverted commas. You can see this is a quotation. So then, so he says, I always talk to people. Then you have to just think, what does the person say? He talked. Talk means you have to identify a theme. Or talk means communication is important. So then you decide, okay, for interaction, communication is vital, right? So communication is going to be a code or a theme, right? So remember, codes or the themes are identified based on the quotations that are in the transcript, right? So I think if you really want in future, right, maybe 1 year, 2 year down the line, or maybe soon, if you really want to have a workshop on data analysis, I'm more than happy to help you, right? How to analyze data. It's not difficult, but sometimes today you find it unless you have experience to fathom what this analysis is. So I think this is kind of a code book, if you like. You have main codes and subcodes. Or if you want, you can say main themes and sub-themes. So one of the main themes is career management. This is similar to communication that I was talking about. Remember, I said that under communication, you could have several sub-themes like technical communication, non-technical communication. So here, right, career management, under which you can have self-perception, career planning, career strategies as sub-themes, right? So then all these the themes, sub-themes you obtain from the transcripts, right? So this is called coded book. Then main preoccupation of a qualitative researcher, right? So as a qualitative researcher, main preoccupation seen through the eyes of the people being studied. So you have to always look at through the eyes of the people. You always look at the description and the context. For example, when you are doing the research, let's say the research is all about Gampaha Vikamarachi University. So it's a context. So I think it's very different to Kalani University context. How people behave, because you have your own, way of doing certain things. You emphasize on the process. Process also very important in qualitative research. As I said to you already, in qualitative research, the structure is very flexible, limited, unlike quantitative research. And concepts and theory are grounded in the data. So I think when you read the data, when you look at the data, you can find a lot of theories inbuilt in the data. Concepts are inbuilt in the data, right? But remember, doing a literature review is very important. So some people say, okay, qualitative research, you don't need literature review. That is wrong. you have to do a literature review on your topic. Then when you look at your data, then you can see, oh, this data can be combined with this particular theory, this particular concept. Okay, then this is very important, this slide. Whether you go for quantitative or qualitative. Lot of my students, especially at master's level, they have a say, unlike undergraduate. So they are really struggling. Whether I should go for quantitative or qualitative. Sometimes they go for quantitative, not they like, because the university or the program culture is such that it is only quantitative. Because I know that if you go to PIM, MBA, so they always, I think I would say 9 out of 10, they recommend quantitative. They discourage qualitative. Right? So I think, but how do you decide whether quantitative or qualitative? I think you can see some points given on this slide. You have to look at your research question. If your research question start how and why, definitely you have to do a qualitative research, right? Then are you interested in depth or breadth? If you want to look at depth, if you want rich data about Vedas, for example, you need to go for qualitative, not quantitative. Quantitative, they never will give you depth. It gives you only breadth. Is subjectivity important? If you want to consider subjectivity as opposed to objectivity, let's say you believe in subjectivity, you believe in people's perception, you believe in multiple realities, right? Let's say you are a person, because I know in the society, I know some of my friends, they are always black and white, right? So I think they are either 0 or 1, my friends. For them, it must be quantitative research, not qualitative. But if you are a kind of a person, you listen to other views, other people's views, right? You believe in multiple realities, right? As a person, that is your personality, then qualitative research is for you, right? Then how many people can you reach? In quantitative research, your sample has to be big. I have to warn you, it has to be more than 100 for sure. But if you can't reach such number of people, if you can reach, let's say 10, 15 people, then you must do a qualitative research. How you confident about your mathematics? Because I know some people are not good at statistics, mathematics. So then don't do quantitative research, and qualitative research is for you. But then again, there's a misconception, because I have noticed that some of my colleagues also say that they sometimes insult qualitative researchers, saying that, oh, qualitative researchers do not know mathematics, that's why they are doing qualitative research. That is also not true, right? There could be qualitative researchers who do not know mathematics, but now the trend is, if you go to US also now, despite the fact that there are not that much of qualitative researchers, now you find a lot of engineers, they are doing qualitative research these days. So they are very conversant in their maths for sure. But in general, let's say you don't like numbers, you hate numbers, then don't do quantitative research, do qualitative research, right? That is your research. How much messiness can you tolerate? Because if you don't like messiness, right, don't do qualitative research. Because qualitative research, you have to consider the holistic uh, you know, approach, right? You have to consider all the variables. It is very messy. Whereas quantitative research, you select a few variables, you focus on that. So if you can tolerate messiness, I think it has to be qualitative research. And if you look at qualitative research documents, for example, journal articles, theses, you can see some of these things on the slides. A lot of direct quotations, right, within inverted commas, rich descriptions, detail about interaction between people, loads of reporting of people's behavior and actions, in-depth accounts people's experiences, their opinions, their feelings, we can see in journal articles and reports. Personal accounts of the researcher, you can see in a dissertation, his experiences. The style of writing is less academic. I said to you before, under rhetorical aspect of qualitative research. Remember, we try to identify quantitative and qualitative research in the light of, epistemological, ontological, right? Then axiological and rhetorical. So rhetorical means the language, right? So then if you look at my experience about qualitative research, so when it comes to asking questions from the respondents, ask specific questions. Don't ask vague questions. Always in an interview, ask the respondent to give examples. Right? Try to be flexible. Right? Always try to reflect on your experience after doing 2 or 3 interviews. Look at your experience. Do you need to really change your research questions that are being asked? Right? Do you have to change the location or whatever? Right? Then do we need to use NVO software? The answer is yes. Better if you can learn NVO and use it, but when it comes to analysis, it cannot do the analysis for you. It helps you store data in a systematic way. So always use the literature to explain your findings, right? Because once you get your findings, remember there's a section called discussion of findings where you compare your findings with the previous literature. So this is common for qualitative research findings as well, right? So I think at the end of the day, as a qualitative research, I have to present my findings, my data to readers. So there are a lot of dedicated qualitative research journals. However, you have to understand that the journals encourage both quantitative, qualitative, and mixed, but there are dedicated qualitative journals. I have given some examples on this slide. For example, Qualitative Inquiry, Qualitative Research, Journal of Ethnographic and Qualitative Research, Qualitative Research Journal. These are, allocated for only qualitative research, right? Article work, if you like. So with that, I think I would like to conclude my today's presentation. I would like to thank once again for inviting me for this presentation. I think I am more than happy to share my knowledge, and I hope definitely I think you people, I don't want to say that everyone, some of you guys will like to do some qualitative research in the future. You have to start at some point. Maybe you can ask your undergraduates to do a qualitative work where you can supervise them. Right? That is also one of the ways that you can learn qualitative, right? Then maybe you can start publishing. Maybe you can publish in a local journal, right? To begin with, right? So I wish you all the best in your research journey and your future endeavors. If you have any questions, you can ask now.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable insights. And also, I must mention that sharing your experience with these young lecturers is a great help also. So, colleagues, if you have any questions, please raise them now.
And of course, I am more than happy. I think you can get my contact details from Janani, my telephone number and my email address. If you have anything when you're doing a qualitative research, Raj, you can ask me, and I have to tell you that I am also still an early career researcher, right? I have to tell you frankly, I completed my PhD maybe 6 years back, still I am on the learning curve. I have to be frank with you, right? So I think I don't think I think today we have to learn. We have to learn from the others also, right? So I think I feel that I know something. I think I am going to learn more in future also. So if you need any help, you can at any point you can ask me in future also. But today, if you have any concerns, any queries, now it is the time for you to ask now.
Yes, sir. I have one question. So, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, Yasodhara.
Yes, when we are preparing questions in qualitative research, is there any some sort of method so we can ask our own questions? As your example in food habits of the people.
Yeah, Yasodhara. Now, when it comes to these, questions, there are, different types of questions that you can ask in a qualitative research. So more broadly, you can classify as opening questions. Some people call it warm-up questions. For example, what's your name, right? What do you do? It has nothing to do with the your research question, main research question. We call it opening questions or warm-up question. Then you have type of question that you should ask is called open question. Open, right? So that means starting. You can use words like why, how, what, right? So that means, for example, can you explain us how you eat your breakfast? So you open up the person. The person will rumbles, talks all and all. That is the main question that you ask in a interview. Then you have another question type called close question. So that you limit the respondent. For example, you can ask, in which year did you get married? Right? So the answer could be yeah, or maybe are you married? Yes or no. But those questions are very few, and very few questions. Maybe if you have 10 questions in your questionnaire, maybe 1 or 2 questions could be these close questions, right? But mainly your questions have to be open question, and finally you can have a closing question. Closing question means you can ask a question like this: do you have anything to say, right? And that question, we call it closing question. So, and in addition to that, when asking questions, you can have what you call prompts. Prompts means, apart from the main questions, based on the literature, you can have some questions ready, right? Because you are aware of the literature. Sometimes if you don't get some answers, sometimes the respondent has forgotten. So you can ask, so what do you think about this food? Do you eat this food in your breakfast? Because Vedda has forgotten to mention a food. So those are called, prompts. So likewise, in an interview, first you have to have a semi-structured questionnaire. When preparing the semi-structured questionnaire, you have to spread different types of questions, mainly open questions, right? So I think if the time allows or if the time permits in future, I can, if you want, I can run a 1 hour session or 1.5 years session, how to conduct interviews that I have been running for last 3-4 years at MBA level and PhD level. More than happy. It's a different thing, right?
Yes, thank you very much, sir. And we are looking forward to working with you in future as well.
Okay, it's my pleasure, Yasodhara.
Sir, this is Chintani.
Yes.
Sir, this is about the language. You have mentioned that in qualitative research, we can use active voice rather than using passive voice.
Correct, correct.
So, sir, it means that when we are writing a full paper based on qualitative research, we have to use active voice.
I think I would say 9 out of 10, if you read it, they use active voice. Right? Yeah, use, for example, introduction section, you can use we. If there are more than one researcher, we. I. If one researcher, I. That is permitted in qualitative research. And the thing is, I really like active voice. I don't know whether you have come across when you read articles, when somebody uses active voice, I mean, it's very interesting when you are reading. I mean, you can just feel like very interesting paper rather than using passive voice.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
If you have any other questions,
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, so I have some basic question related to the reality. So you have mentioned the qualitative research, they have multiple realities. So it means, as example, myself and Johnny go to the Vedas and identify their food habit. Based on our reality, our finding will be changed, sir? Isn't it?
Correct. It will be completely different.
And on the other hand, sir,
But the thing is, sometimes you are trying to co-construct the reality. Sometimes I may have not seen something seen by the Janani, right? Because here the thing is, we look at a lot of variables. You understand, right? Because in quantitative research, we select few variables, right? Then it is easy. But here, right now look at the current crisis in Sri Lanka. It's very difficult for us to single out few variables, isn't it? Right? Now, if you go out and you come back and you report certain this, I come back and I report certain this. So it's very different. But in quality, then somebody can argue, no, then I mean, how can you generalize? How can you generalize your findings? You say something, that person, says something. But remember, in qualitative research, this bias is accepted.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, this is very rich. Right? Because quantitative research, you can't get that kind of rich data, right? You go out and especially, I think, I don't want to criticize quantitative research. I know, when, I mean, these days when you do quantitative research, let's say you by using a Google form or whatever you send it, right? Then what respondents they do is they there's a strongly agree, neutral. Most of them, they just put a cross in the middle, right? So I think you can't get the correct picture. But now here they look at quantitative research, a bigger sample, so that they can generalize. But at the end of the day, you cannot get the correct picture about the problem. But if you really interview 5 people, 6 people, right? Then you can get the honest, ideas, opinion. So that will give you a better idea. Don't you think so?
Yeah. As well as Professor, so I have a curious feeling. So what about this reality work in the mixed methods?
Now the thing is, now actually, to be honest with you, now and I did not tell you. I think I said to you that there are 2 paradigms. Remember?
Yeah.
Positivistic paradigms.
And social consideration.
Yeah, correct. Multiple reality. So I did not mention the word for mixed method. The paradigm philosophy is called pragmatism. So there we believe in both realities, single reality and multiple realities. So the thing is, I think if you look at certain research questions, don't you think that some questions demand single reality, some questions demand multiple reality? Don't you agree with me? Right now, for example, scientific research, science research that are done, right? Single reality.
Yeah.
You can convert it to a multiple reality. But whereas certain, especially social research, right? Like this Veda's case, maybe ragging behavior, then multiple reality, right? So there, if you are doing a mixed research, I think you have to look at your research questions, and maybe some research questions demands single reality, whereas some questions demands multiple realities.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to be honest with you, I do not recommend mixed method unless for your PhD. Even PhD, I could remember when I was trying to do a mixed method, my professor discouraged me, and today I'm happy. Then I did qualitative. I think you know why? Though it is the best method, if you are trying to do a mixed method, I think it takes a lot of time. I have to tell you that. Now today, before I joined your presentation, I was witnessing a PhD presentation done by one of the students. She did a very good job, but she has used mixed method. Now she has done a wonderful job in quantitative, but now she's struggling with qualitative part because she doesn't have time. It takes awful lot of time. You collect data quantitatively, then interviews. So I think it's not that easy.
Yeah.
Though it is the best method.
Okay. I understand. Professor, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and experiences. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
So any other questions?
So this is Sisita.
Yes,
I
Sisita.
just wanted to know, can we use observations, our own observations as data? So for example, we are not going to ask any questions or interview someone. We go to a situation and we observe things and we take our own notes.
Yeah, correct.
So can we use that kind of?
Yeah, very good. Now, especially when it comes to case study method, it depends on the type that you select, Sisita. Now, for example, if you choose phenomenology, you have to use only interviews, right? But when it comes to case study method, one of the data collection method is observation. Now, in my case, I use case study method. I use observation to triangulate my data. That means, because you know that when you collect data from different sources, you can achieve triangulation. Triangulation means that your data, the finding will be more accurate, more reliable. So, for example, you can say that, okay, now, for example, in my case, I interviewed, business people, right? So then I would look at their business, how they support my findings. So that is accepted in case study method. But that is not mandatory. In case study method, there are 6 sources to collect data, right? So observation is one of them. And the other thing is, I could not tell you. Now, observation, when I say observation, there are 2 types of observation. Participant observation and non-participant observation. Now, non-participant observation is used extensively in marketing research. I think I gave you one example. Now, let's say your research, you are going to analyze consumer behavior in supermarket. So there, I think you are not going to get data by interviewing clients. You go there, you maybe stand at the entrance of the supermarket, you observe the behavior and you take down some notes, right? You can say, customer 1, first he goes to this merchandise in shelf, then he goes to this, another shelf or whatever, right? That is observation, non-participant. Participant observation means this Veda's case. You go there, you wear Veda's clothes, you eat like Veda, and being like a participant, you observe the behavior and you make notes. It's a very good question.
Right.
But By the way, I mean, I am very happy. I think you guys are asking questions because I am doing these kind of things, sessions to some segments. I think they don't ask questions, but in your case, I am very happy that you are very, interactive. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much for your informative session, and I think it was a really eye-opening for every, each of us, even for me. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Are there any questions? So I have a small question about ethics.
Yes, Janani.
So what kind of ethic challenges do qualitative
Yeah,
research?
it's a very good question.
Sorry, sir.
Right now, more than quantitative research, I think I forgot. In qualitative research, I think you have to understand that now when you are dealing with human beings, respondents, and when you are dealing with companies, you cannot divulge their names in your reports, right? In your journal articles. So then what you should do is you have to get, we call it informed consent from the respondent, from the companies. That means, let's say if you are getting data from, let's say, uh, Samurdi microfinance company, then you have to send a letter, and first you have to get their permission to get the data. So in that letter, you have to say that you are not going to divulge the identities of the people, nor the confidential data to outsiders. And when you interview the persons also, you have to get a letter signed by the respondent saying that they are aware that they can leave the interview at any given time. Sometimes, some interviewees or the respondents, in the middle of the interview, they say, no, I am not prepared to give you answers. I am not happy. So let me leave. So I think, so in the consent, I think there's a letter, you have to say that they can leave at any given point and their identities are not revealed. So you have to get their consent. But the thing is, sometimes you can't get the informed consent. Then you have to get what you call oral concept, right? Oral consent means verbally they say that. You have to first explain, okay, this is the objective of my research. So don't worry, I'm not going to tell you names. We are not going to divulge your identities in the report. Then the person say, okay, I'm fine, I'm happy. Then that is called oral consent. But that person may not give something in writing. That is also accepted in research. You can say oral consent, but things are changing slowly, right? Some research institutes, universities may say that no, oral consent can't be accepted. You have to get, written consent. So, but then again, there are some challenges I have to tell you. Now, one of the another aspect of ethics is, I said to you that you are going to record the conversation. So, sometimes I have seen that some respondents are reluctant being recorded. They say that don't record my conversation. So some my students say that, sir, I do not say that I am recording. So without their knowledge, I record it. Can I do that? It is unethical. But I don't want to tell you that don't do unethical things. But then again, you have to think that at the end of the day, you need data also, right? So how you get the data? So sometimes you have to use the common sense as well, right? But overall, what I want to tell you is, the ethics part is very, very important in qualitative research. In your third chapter, in your thesis, research methodology chapter, you have to spare, at least a paragraph or two to write about ethics.
Thank you very much, sir, for your great explanations. And I think all of you have got to get clarified your questions. So with that, we have come to the end of our session. Now I would like to invite Head Department of Management Studies, Ms. Yashodhara Hennayaka, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Over to you, madam.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Janani. Good evening to everyone. It is an end of an interesting webinar session on qualitative research methods. And I am honored to deliver the vote of thanks on this special occasion. So on behalf of the Faculty of Indigenous Social Sciences and Management Studies of Gampaha Wickramaraj University of Indigenous Medicine, I extend a hearty vote of thanks to the main speaker of today's session, Professor Ruwan Abeysekara, Head Department of Finance of University of Kelaniya. Sir, it was an insightful session. I appreciate your efforts on sharing knowledge on quantitative research methods. And also, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Faculty of Indigenous Social Sciences and Management Studies for their continued support in this webinar series. And finally, I extend my sincere gratitude to the listeners or the participants for their active participation. Thank you very much. Have a pleasure evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Yashodhara and everyone. Hope to see you soon. Have a good evening.
Yes, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure.